Marcus Williams adjusted his gold Rolex and looked out from his corner office on the 40th floor. The city spread below him like a chessboard, and he had been playing this game for 15 years. Starting with nothing but a dream and a borrowed laptop, he had built Williams Tech Solutions into an empire worth $200 million. At 38, Marcus was known throughout Chicago as the young entrepreneur who had revolutionized data management systems. His company employed over 800 people, and his name appeared regularly on business magazine covers. Yet today, something bothered him more than the quarterly reports stacked on his mahogany desk. It was about Jessica Chun, the new intern who had started 3 weeks ago. Jessica was 23, fresh out of Northwestern University with a computer science degree and enough student loans to buy a small house. She was quiet, hardworking, and always the first to arrive and last to leave. Marcus had noticed her dedication, but what caught his attention was something else entirely. Yesterday, during the staff meeting, Jessica had presented an idea for improving their client database system. Her proposal was brilliant, showing insights that some of his senior developers had missed. But when the meeting ended, Marcus saw how the other employees treated her. They dismissed her ideas with polite smiles. They talked over her when she tried to explain technical details. Some even made subtle comments about how interns should focus on learning rather than teaching. Marcus recognized the signs because he had lived through them himself years ago. Being a young black man in the tech industry had taught him about invisible barriers and unspoken rules. He remembered the venture capital meetings where investors questioned every aspect of his business plan twice as hard as they questioned white entrepreneurs. He remembered the networking events where people assumed he was someone's assistant rather than a CEO. Now, he wondered if Jessica faced similar challenges for different reasons. That evening, Marcus made an unusual decision. Instead of staying late at the office as he usually did, he left at 5:30, just 10 minutes after Jessica gathered her things and headed for the elevator. He told himself he was simply curious about where his employees lived, what their commute was like. Good management meant understanding your team. But deep down, he knew there was more to it. Marcus followed Jessica's beat-up Honda Civic through downtown Chicago traffic. She drove carefully, signaling early and maintaining safe distances. The car was at least 10 years old, with a dent in the rear bumper and a crack across the back window that someone had covered with clear tape. He kept several cars between them, feeling slightly foolish but unable to stop himself. His black BMW blended easily into the evening rush hour traffic. Jessica had turned off the main highway into a neighborhood Marcus recognized but had never visited. The area was called Riverside, though there was no river nearby anymore. It had been filled in decades ago to make room for low-income housing projects. The buildings were old but maintained, with small patches of grass that residents kept as neat as possible despite the urban environment. Jessica parked in front of a 3-story brick building that looked like it housed about 20 apartments. The windows were clean, and someone had planted flowers and old coffee cans along the front steps. It was clear that people cared about this place, even if they did not have much money to improve it. Marcus parked across the street and watched as Jessica climbed the front steps. She stopped to water the flowers with a small watering can she pulled from her backpack. Then she unlocked the front door and disappeared inside. He sat in his car for a few minutes, wondering what he was doing. This felt like an invasion of privacy, yet something compelled him to understand more about the young woman who worked so hard and received so little recognition. Just as Marcus was about to leave, Jessica emerged from the building again. She had changed from her business clothes into jeans and a simple t-shirt. She carried a large bag over her shoulder and walked with purpose down the street. Marcus followed on foot, staying far enough behind to avoid being noticed. The neighborhood was busier now as people returned from work. Children played on small front porches while parents prepared dinner. The smell of various cuisines mixed in the air, creating a rich tapestry of cultures living side by side. Jessica walked 4 blocks to a community center housed in a converted warehouse. The sign above the door read, Riverside Youth Technology Center, in hand-painted letters. Through the large windows, Marcus could see rows of computers and young people gathered around tables. He moved closer, positioning himself where he could observe without being seen. Inside, Jessica was setting up a laptop at the front of a room filled with about 15 teenagers. They ranged in age from maybe 13 to 17, all focused intently on her as she began speaking. Marcus could not hear the words through the glass, but he could see the engagement on every young face. Jessica was teaching them something about computers. She moved between the students, helping them individually, pointing at screens, and encouraging them with smiles and nods. The teenagers responded with enthusiasm, raising hands, asking questions, and working collaboratively on whatever projects she had assigned. Marcus realized he was witnessing something remarkable. One of the teenagers, a girl who could not have been more than 14, was struggling with something on her computer. Marcus watched as Jessica pulled up a chair next to her and patiently worked through the problem step by step. She did not take over the keyboard, but guided the girl's hands, letting her make the discoveries herself. The girl's face lit up when she finally understood, and she immediately turned to help another student who was having similar difficulties. Jessica had not just taught a technical skill, she had created a teacher. Marcus found himself moving closer to the window. A security guard noticed him and approached with a friendly but cautious expression. "Can I help you with something?" the guard asked. "I was just curious about the programs here," Marcus replied honestly. "I work in technology, and I am always interested in youth education initiatives." The guard's expression warmed. "Oh, you should definitely talk to Miss Chen. She volunteers here 3 nights a week, teaching these kids programming and web design." Amazing young woman. Most of these kids never had access to proper computer education before she started coming. "How long has she been doing this?" Marcus asked. "About 6 months now. She shows up every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday without fail. Brings her own equipment half the time because our stuff is pretty outdated. The kids love her." Marcus felt something shift inside his chest. Here was Jessica, working a demanding internship during the day, living in a modest apartment, driving an old car, yet dedicating her free time to teaching underprivileged teenagers the same skills that could eventually lift them out of poverty. He thought about his own journey. After his company became successful, he had donated money to various causes and attended charity galas. He had written checks and made speeches about giving back to the community. But Jessica was giving something more valuable than money. She was giving her time, her knowledge, and her hope. Through the window, Marcus watched as the class session ended. The teenagers gathered around Jessica, clearly reluctant to leave. She spent extra time with several of them, answering questions and encouraging them to practice what they had learned. Even after the official class ended, she remained patient and engaged. One boy, who looked about 16 and wore a jacket that had seen better days, approached Jessica with what appeared to be a personal laptop. The computer was old and covered with stickers, but he had brought it to show her something. Marcus could see the pride on the boy's face as he demonstrated whatever he had created. Jessica's reaction was genuine enthusiasm. She examined his work carefully, asked questions, and offered suggestions. The boy nodded eagerly, soaking up every word. When he finally packed up his laptop, he gave Jessica a quick hug before heading toward the exit. Marcus realized he was witnessing the kind of impact that money alone could never create. Jessica was not just teaching technical skills. She was showing these young people that someone believed in their potential. She was opening doors to futures they might never have imagined possible. As the community center began to empty, Marcus walked back to his car. His mind raced with thoughts and possibilities. Tomorrow, he would return to his office and see Jessica differently, not just as an intern who needed to prove herself, but as someone who had already proven her character in ways that mattered far more than any business presentation. He thought about the quarterly reports waiting on his desk, the board meetings scheduled for next week, and the expansion plans that would determine his company's future. All of it felt different now, viewed through the lens of what really mattered. The drive back to his penthouse apartment in downtown Chicago gave Marcus time to process what he had seen. His building had a doorman, valet parking, and a view of Lake Michigan that real estate agents described as priceless. It was a long way from the small apartment in Detroit where he had grown up, sharing a bedroom with two brothers while his mother worked two jobs to keep them fed. Success had given him comfort, security, and recognition. But tonight, he wondered if somewhere along the way he had lost touch with the purpose that had originally driven him to build his company. Marcus had started Williams Tech Solutions with the goal of creating opportunities, not just for himself, but for people who looked like him, people who came from neighborhoods like the one he had just visited. Yet most of his employees now came from prestigious universities and affluent backgrounds. His hiring practices favored candidates with perfect resumes and impressive connections. When had he stopped looking for potential and started demanding proof? That night, Marcus could not sleep. He stood on his balcony, looking out at the city lights, thinking about Jessica and the teenagers she was teaching. He thought about the community center with its hand-painted sign and outdated computers. He thought about the determination he had seen in young faces, hungry for knowledge and opportunity. By morning, Marcus had made several decisions that would change not only Jessica's life, but the entire direction of his company. He had seen something that night that reminded him of why he had started this journey in the first place. Success was not just about building wealth. It was about building bridges for others to cross. The next day would bring conversations that neither Marcus nor Jessica expected. But first, he had some phone calls to make and some plans to set in motion. What he had witnessed at the Riverside Youth Technology Center had stolen his heart, but it had also given him back his purpose. The next morning arrived gray and drizzly, typical Chicago weather that matched the uncertainty Marcus felt as he prepared for what might be the most important conversation of his business career. He had spent the night making phone calls, sending emails, and drafting plans that would reshape his company's future. Jessica arrived at the office at 7:30, as she had every day since her internship began. She carried a cup of coffee from the convenience store down the street, rather than buying from the expensive cafe in the building lobby. Marcus noticed these details now in ways he had not before. He watched from his office as she settled at her workstation, a small desk in the corner of the open floor plan where most junior employees worked. Despite being relegated to the least desirable spot in the office, Jessica had organized her space with care. A small plant sat next to her monitor, and she had taped a photo of what appeared to be her family to the edge of her desk. Marcus waited until 9 o'clock before approaching her. The office was busy now, filled with the conversations and keyboard clicking that marked the beginning of another productive day at Williams Tech Solutions. Several employees nodded respectfully as Marcus passed their desks, but their attention quickly returned to their screens. "Jessica," Marcus said, stopping beside her workstation. "Could I see you in my office for a few minutes?" The request caused several nearby employees to look up with curiosity. Interns rarely met privately with the CEO unless something was wrong. Jessica's face showed concern as she saved her work and followed Marcus across the office floor. His corner office was spacious and professionally decorated, with awards and photos documenting his company's growth over the years. Floor-to-ceiling windows provided a commanding view of the city. Jessica had never been inside this space before, and Marcus could see her taking in the details. "Please, sit down," Marcus said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs facing his desk. He chose not to sit behind the desk, instead taking the chair next to hers. The gesture was intended to create equality rather than hierarchy. "Is everything okay, Mr. Williams?" Jessica asked, her voice carefully controlled. "If this is about the database proposal I made yesterday, I can revise it, or actually," Marcus interrupted gently. "Your proposal was excellent. That is part of what I wanted to discuss with you." Relief flickered across Jessica's face, but confusion remained. Marcus had rehearsed this conversation during his sleepless night, but now that the moment had arrived, the words felt more difficult than expected. He was about to reveal that he had followed her, invaded her privacy, and observed her personal life without permission. Yet he also needed to explain how that experience had changed his perspective entirely. Jessica, I want to be completely honest with you about something. Yesterday evening, I followed you home from work. The words landed like a physical blow. Jessica's eyes widened, and she instinctively leaned back in her chair. Her hand moved slightly toward her purse, a defensive gesture that made Marcus realize how his statement must sound. Before you say anything, Marcus continued quickly, let me explain why and what I discovered. He told her about noticing how other employees had dismissed her ideas during the staff meeting. He explained his own experiences as a young Black entrepreneur facing similar dismissiveness from investors and colleagues. He described following her car, watching her water the flowers at her apartment building, and eventually observing her volunteer work at the community center. I know what I did was inappropriate, Marcus said. I invaded your privacy, and I apologize for that. But what I witnessed at the Riverside Youth Technology Center changed something fundamental in how I see both you and my own company. Jessica listened without interrupting, her expression cycling through anger, confusion, and curiosity. When Marcus finished speaking, silence filled the office for several long moments. Why are you telling me this? She finally asked. Because I want to offer you something, but I need you to understand that it comes from a place of genuine respect, not pity or charity. Marcus stood and walked to his desk, retrieving a folder he had prepared that morning. He handed it to Jessica and returned to his seat. That contains a formal job offer for a position I am creating specifically for you. Director of Community Technology Development. Your responsibilities would include expanding our diversity, hiring initiatives, developing partnerships with community organizations, and creating programs that bring technology education to underprivileged youth. Jessica opened the folder and scanned the documents inside. Marcus watched her eyes widen as she read the salary figure and benefits package. It was more money than many senior employees at the company earned. I do not understand, she said. Yesterday, I was an intern, and today you want to make me a director? Yesterday, I thought I understood what this company needed to grow, Marcus replied. Today, I realize I was wrong. We have been hiring the same types of people with the same backgrounds and the same perspectives. We have created a successful business, but we have failed to create the kind of impact I originally envisioned. Marcus moved to the window and looked down at the street below. When I started this company, I told myself it would be different. I would create opportunities for people who looked like me, who came from backgrounds like mine. But success made me comfortable, and comfortable people make safe choices. What you're doing at that community center, he continued, turning back to face Jessica, that is what I should have been doing all along. Not just donating money to causes, but actually investing time and energy in developing human potential. Jessica closed the folder and set it on the small table between their chairs. Mr. Williams, I appreciate this offer, but I need to understand something. Are you offering me this position because of my qualifications, or because you feel guilty about following me? The question was direct and fair, exactly what Marcus had hoped she would ask. It showed the kind of analytical thinking and ethical grounding that made her perfect for the role he envisioned. Both, Marcus answered honestly. Following you was wrong, and I do feel guilty about that. But what I observed was not guilt-inducing. It was inspiring. You have skills that go far beyond what I saw on your resume or in your coursework. You have the ability to connect with people, to see potential where others see problems, and to create positive change with limited resources. Marcus returned to his chair and leaned forward. Jessica, in the 3 weeks you have been here, you have identified inefficiencies in our systems that our senior developers missed. You have proposed solutions that could save us hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. But more importantly, you have shown a character and commitment that money cannot buy. Those teenagers at the community center, he continued, they do not care that you are an intern or that you drive an old car or that you live in Riverside. They care that you show up, that you believe in them, and that you give them skills they can use to build better futures. That is exactly what this company needs. Jessica was quiet for several minutes, processing what she had heard. Marcus gave her the time she needed, understanding that this conversation was as overwhelming for her as it had been unexpected for him. What exactly would this position involve? She finally asked. Marcus had spent hours developing the answer to that question. First, you would work with our HR department to redesign our recruiting processes. Instead of only hiring from top-tier universities, we would partner with community colleges, vocational schools, and organizations like the youth center where you volunteer. Second, you would develop internship and apprenticeship programs that provide real opportunities for advancement, not just resume builders for people who already have advantages. Third, you would create community partnerships that allow us to give back in meaningful ways, not just writing checks to charities, but actually using our expertise to solve real problems in underserved communities. Jessica picked up the folder again and read through the documents more carefully. The position came with a substantial budget for program development, authority to hire staff, and direct reporting to Marcus himself. It was the kind of role that typically required years of experience and advanced degrees. Why me? She asked. There are people with more experience, better connections, advanced degrees in nonprofit management or community development. Because, Marcus said, those people did not spend their Tuesday evening teaching teenagers how to code after working a full day at an unpaid internship. Those people did not identify solutions to our database problems that our senior staff missed. Those people did not water flowers at their apartment building even though nobody was watching. Character cannot be taught, Jessica. Vision cannot be purchased. Commitment cannot be hired. You already have all of those qualities. Everything else can be learned. The offer represented a risk for both of them. Marcus was betting his company's future on someone with minimal corporate experience. Jessica would be leaving the traditional path of gradually working her way up through various positions and responsibilities. I need time to think about this, Jessica said finally. Of course, take as much time as you need. But I hope you will also let me show you something. Marcus walked to his computer and pulled up a presentation he had created that morning. The screen filled with images and data about Williams Tech Solutions' current charitable giving, hiring practices, and community involvement. This is what we do now, he said, clicking through slides showing annual donations, diversity statistics, and corporate social responsibility initiatives. The numbers were respectable, but unremarkable, the kind of giving expected from any successful company. And this, Marcus continued, switching to a different presentation, is what we could do. The new slides showed ambitious plans for community technology centers, scholarship programs, apprenticeship opportunities, and partnerships with schools in underserved neighborhoods. The scope was massive, involving millions of dollars in investment and fundamental changes to how the company operated. The business case for this approach is stronger than you might expect, Marcus explained. Companies with diverse workforces consistently outperform their competitors. Communities with access to technology education develop stronger local economies. And businesses that invest in their communities create loyal customer bases and positive brand recognition. But beyond the business case, he continued, this is the right thing to do. I have been successful beyond my wildest dreams, but success without purpose is just accumulation. Jessica studied the projected plans with the same intensity she had shown when analyzing the company's database systems. Marcus could see her mind working, identifying opportunities and potential challenges. The community center where I volunteer, she said eventually, their computers are ancient, their internet connection is unreliable, and they have no budget for software licenses. But every week, those kids show up ready to learn, hoping that technology skills might give them opportunities their parents never had. Exactly, Marcus said. And there are dozens of similar organizations throughout Chicago, hundreds throughout Illinois, thousands across the country. Imagine what we could accomplish if we approach community development the same way we approach software development, systematically, strategically, and with adequate resources. The conversation continued for another hour, with Jessica asking detailed questions about budget, timeline, staffing, and accountability measures. Her questions demonstrated exactly the kind of analytical thinking and practical planning skills that Marcus had hoped to find. By the time Jessica left his office, she had not yet accepted the position, but Marcus could see the excitement in her eyes. She understood the vision, appreciated the opportunity, and recognized the potential impact they could create together. The rest of the day brought a series of meetings with department heads, legal advisors, and board members as Marcus began implementing the changes necessary to support his new direction. Some colleagues were enthusiastic about the community development initiatives. Others questioned whether such programs aligned with the company's core mission of providing data management solutions to corporate clients. Marcus expected the resistance and had prepared responses to common concerns about cost, focus, and return on investment. But he also made it clear that this was not a proposal for committee consideration. It was a decision he had made as CEO and majority shareholder. That evening, as employees began leaving the office, Marcus noticed Jessica packing up her workstation with unusual care. She organized her few personal items, backed up her computer files, and cleaned her small workspace more thoroughly than necessary for a typical day. She was preparing for a significant change, though she had not yet announced her decision. Marcus returned to his office and looked out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the early darkness. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities. Whether Jessica accepted his offer or not, he had committed himself to a different path forward. But deep in his heart, he believed she would say yes. The same instinct that had driven him to follow her home told him that Jessica understood the importance of the work they could do together. She had already proven her commitment to community development and youth education. Now she just needed to believe that she was ready for this level of responsibility and impact. The decision would change both of their lives in ways neither could fully anticipate. 3 days later, Jessica appeared at Marcus's office door with the signed contract in her hand and a determination in her eyes that told him everything he needed to know. She had not just accepted the position. She had embraced the vision that came with it. "I have conditions," she said without preamble as she entered his office. Marcus smiled, gesturing for her to sit down. He had hoped she would negotiate rather than simply accept his offer. It showed the kind of strategic thinking he would need from someone in this role. "I want to start at the community center where I volunteer," Jessica continued. "Not as a symbolic gesture, but as a pilot program. If we can create a successful model there, we can replicate it elsewhere. But if we cannot make it work in a place where I already have relationships and understanding, we have no business trying to expand." "Agreed," Marcus said immediately. "Second, I want full transparency about budget and decision-making. If this position is real, then I need real authority to make it work. I cannot be effective if every decision has to go through multiple approval processes." Also agreed. Third, I want to hire my own team. Not people from traditional corporate backgrounds, but people who understand community work. Some of them might not have college degrees, but they will have experience and connections that matter more than credentials. Marcus nodded. "What else?" "I want measurable goals and regular evaluation. Not just feel-good metrics about how many programs we start, but real data about outcomes. Are participants getting jobs? Are they staying in school? Are they developing skills that actually improve their lives?" "Absolutely essential," Marcus replied. "What other conditions?" Jessica took a deep breath. "I want you to understand that this work will sometimes conflict with traditional business priorities. Community development cannot be rushed to meet quarterly earnings expectations. Building trust takes time, and sustainable change happens slowly." "I understand." And finally, Jessica said, "I want your commitment that this is not just a phase or a public relations strategy. If we start this work, we finish it, even if it takes years to show results." Marcus leaned back in his chair, impressed by the thoroughness of her conditions. She had spent the past 3 days thinking not just about the opportunity, but about the challenges and potential failures that could undermine the entire initiative. Jessica, everything you have asked for makes perfect sense. More importantly, the fact that you asked for these conditions tells me I made the right choice. You're thinking like someone who cares about results, not just recognition. When do I start? She asked. Immediately. But first, we need to make an announcement to the rest of the company, and then I want to take you somewhere. The company-wide meeting was scheduled for that afternoon. Marcus had deliberately kept the agenda vague, stating only that he would be discussing new strategic directions for Williams Tech Solutions. Speculation had been building for days among employees who noticed unusual activity in the executive offices. When the entire staff gathered in the main conference room, Marcus could see curiosity and concern on many faces. Major announcements in corporate environments often meant layoffs, reorganizations, or other disruptive changes. 3 weeks ago, Marcus began and in turn presented an idea that could save this company hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. The idea was brilliant, practical, and well-researched. But what struck me more than the quality of the proposal was how it was received by some members of our team. The room grew quiet. Several employees glanced toward Jessica, who sat near the back of the room with a composed expression. I realized that we have created an environment where good ideas can be overlooked simply because they come from someone without seniority or an impressive title. We have become comfortable with our own perspectives and resistant to voices that might challenge our assumptions. Marcus continued, that realization led me to examine other aspects of our company culture. Our hiring practices, our community involvement, our definition of success, and our vision for the future. Effective immediately, we are launching a new division focused on community technology development. This initiative will expand our hiring practices, create partnerships with underserved communities, and develop programs that use our expertise to solve real problems beyond our traditional client base. Marcus gestured toward Jessica. Leading this effort will be Jessica Chun, who has been promoted from intern to director of community technology development. The announcement created a visible stir throughout the room. Some employees looked surprised, others pleased, and a few appeared skeptical. Marcus had expected mixed reactions and was prepared to address concerns. I know some of you are wondering how someone can go from intern to director in 3 weeks. The answer is that Jessica has already been doing director-level work. We just were not paying attention. Her insights into our systems, her commitment to continuous learning, and her leadership in community education make her uniquely qualified for this role. Marcus spent the next 30 minutes outlining the community development initiative, answering questions, and addressing concerns about resources and priorities. By the end of the meeting, most employees seemed genuinely excited about the new direction, though Marcus knew that genuine enthusiasm would depend on successful implementation. After the meeting, Marcus and Jessica drove to the Riverside Youth Technology Center. Marcus had called ahead to arrange a meeting with the center director, Maria Santos, a woman in her 50s who had been working in community development for over 20 years. Jessica has told me wonderful things about your work here, Maria said as she led them through the center. But I have to admit, I am curious about why a successful businessman wants to meet with us. The community center was exactly as Marcus remembered from his evening observation, but seeing it in daylight revealed additional details. The building was older than he had realized, with worn linoleum floors and paint that had been touched up many times over the years. Yet everything was clean and well-organized, creating an atmosphere of dignity despite limited resources. Mrs. Santos, Marcus said, I want to propose a partnership that could benefit both our organizations. He explained his vision for community technology development, the resources Williams Tech Solutions could provide, and his hope that the Riverside Center could serve as a pilot location for expanded programming. Maria listened carefully, asking detailed questions about funding, control, and long-term commitments. Her experience had taught her to be skeptical of corporate initiatives that promised dramatic changes, but delivered only temporary publicity. Mr. Williams, she said finally, we have had other companies approach us with similar offers. They want to put their logo on our programs, take photos for their websites, and issue press releases about their community involvement. But when budget pressures arise or leadership changes, these partnerships disappear. What would make this different? She continued. Marcus appreciated her directness. First, Jessica will be working here regularly, not just visiting for ceremonial purposes. Second, our commitment is measured in years, not quarters. Third, we are not looking for publicity. We are looking for results. And fourth, Jessica added, any changes we make will be developed in partnership with you and your staff. We are not here to impose solutions, but to provide resources for strategies that you know will work in your community. Maria smiled for the first time since they had arrived. That is exactly what I hoped to hear. The conversation continued for 2 hours, covering everything from technology needs to staffing requirements to evaluation methods. By the end of the meeting, they had outlined a comprehensive plan for upgrading the center's computer lab, expanding class offerings, and providing advanced training for students who showed particular aptitude. There's one more thing, Marcus said as they prepared to leave. I would like to fund a scholarship program for center participants who want to pursue technology education beyond what you can provide here. College, technical school, certification programs, whatever path makes sense for each individual student. Maria's eyes widened. How many scholarships? However, many students you have who are ready and willing to take advantage of them. I do not want cost to be a barrier for anyone. As they drove back downtown, Jessica was quiet, processing everything that had happened in the past week. Her life had changed completely, in ways she was still trying to understand. Are you having second thoughts? Marcus asked. No, Jessica replied. I'm having big thoughts. This is going to be harder than either of us imagined, but also more important. What do you mean? Jessica pointed toward the neighborhood they were leaving. Those kids at the center, they do not just need computer skills. They need to see examples of people who look like them succeeding in fields they never thought were available. They need mentors, connections, and opportunities that go beyond what any single program can provide. You are right, Marcus said. What do you propose we do about that? I want to create an internship pipeline that brings students from community centers into our company. Not just for diversity numbers, but as genuine preparation for technology careers. I want to partner with other successful professionals who can serve as mentors. I want to build relationships with universities and employers who will give our students real opportunities. Marcus smiled. Now you're thinking like a director. Over the following months, the Community Technology Initiative grew beyond anything Marcus had originally envisioned. Jessica hired a team of 5 people, including 2 former students from the Riverside Center who had completed college degrees and returned to help others follow similar paths. The program expanded to 12 community centers throughout Chicago, each receiving upgraded technology, expanded programming, and scholarship opportunities. More importantly, 93% of program participants who applied to college or technical schools were accepted, and 87% of those who graduated found employment in technology-related fields. Williams Tech Solutions' hiring practices also transformed dramatically. Instead of recruiting only from elite universities, the company developed partnerships with community colleges and specialized training programs. Employee diversity increased significantly, and with it came new perspectives that improved product development and customer service. The company's revenue grew by 38% in the first year of the community initiative, driven largely by contracts with organizations that valued Williams Tech Solutions' commitment to social responsibility. More importantly, employee satisfaction and retention rates reached all-time highs as staff members felt connected to meaningful work beyond their individual projects. Marcus often worked late into the evening now, but for different reasons than before. Instead of reviewing financial reports and expansion plans, he spent time reading updates from community centers, reviewing scholarship applications, and planning visits to new partner organizations. 1 year after he had first followed Jessica home from work, Marcus stood in the same community center where his perspective had fundamentally changed. The room was filled with teenagers, parents, community leaders, and Williams Tech Solutions employees celebrating the graduation of the first class of advanced programming students. Jessica stood at the front of the room, presenting certificates to young people who had completed 6 months of intensive training and were now prepared for entry-level positions in technology companies throughout the city. Each graduate also received a laptop computer and a 1-year mentorship commitment from a Williams Tech Solutions employee. Marcus watched as one of the graduates, the same 16-year-old boy he had observed showing Jessica his programming project a year earlier, demonstrated a mobile application he had designed to help community organizations manage volunteer scheduling. The app was sophisticated, user-friendly, and directly relevant to real problems faced by nonprofit organizations. Carlos created this application as his capstone project, Jessica explained to the audience. But he did not stop there. He has already licensed it to 3 community organizations and is using the proceeds to help pay for his computer science education at the University of Illinois. The applause was enthusiastic, but Marcus noticed something more important than the recognition. Carlos stood confidently, answering questions about his programming choices and future plans with the poise of someone who knew exactly where he was going and how he planned to get there. That transformation multiplied across dozens of young people, and their families represented the kind of success that could never be measured in quarterly reports. After the ceremony, Marcus and Jessica walked outside together, breathing the cool autumn air and reflecting on how much had changed since their first awkward conversation in his office. "Do you ever regret following me home that night?" Jessica asked. Marcus considered the question seriously. "I regret invading your privacy, but I cannot regret the conversation it led to, the programs we have created, or the lives that have been changed because of this work." "What about you?" he asked. "Do you regret accepting a position that has consumed most of your free time and required you to learn skills you never expected to need?" Jessica smiled. "I have learned that my free time was never really free. I was already committed to community education. Now, I just have the resources to do it properly. And I have learned something about myself too," she continued. "I thought success meant climbing a corporate ladder, getting promoted through traditional channels, and eventually earning respect through years of conventional achievement. But real success means using whatever platform you have to create opportunities for others. It means being willing to take risks on behalf of people who have not had the same advantages. It means measuring your impact not by your own advancement, but by how many people you can help advance." Marcus nodded, thinking about his own journey from ambitious entrepreneur to community-focused leader. "I spent 15 years building a successful business, but it took one evening watching you teach teenagers to understand what business success should actually accomplish." As they reached their cars, Marcus reflected on the unexpected path that had brought them to this moment. Following Jessica had been impulsive, inappropriate, and potentially harmful. Yet it had also led to discoveries about character, purpose, and the difference between achievement and fulfillment. The Community Technology Initiative had become the most successful and rewarding project of Marcus's career, not because it generated the most revenue, but because it created the most lasting positive impact. Williams Tech Solutions was now known throughout Chicago not just as a profitable company, but as an organization that invested genuinely in community development and youth opportunity. Jessica had evolved from an overlooked intern to a recognized leader in community technology education, receiving invitations to speak at conferences and consult with organizations across the country. But more importantly, she had created a model that other companies and communities could adapt to their own circumstances. The success of their partnership demonstrated that meaningful change happened not through grand gestures or massive donations, but through sustained commitment, authentic relationships, and willingness to invest in human potential even when the returns could not be immediately quantified. As Marcus drove home that night, he passed through the Riverside neighborhood where this journey had begun. The community center now displayed a professional sign indicating its partnership with Williams Tech Solutions. But more significantly, The surrounding streets showed signs of gradual economic improvement as program graduates found employment and invested in their own community. Change, Marcus had learned, was not just about individual transformation, but about creating ripple effects that strengthened entire communities over time. Following Jessica home had stolen his heart, but giving his heart to community development had returned something much more valuable, a sense of purpose that transcended personal success and created legacy worth leaving behind.